All right, welcome everyone to Pub's first meeting of January. Under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely, electronically, or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and the public will have an opportunity to provide comment during the public comment portion of our agenda, and you can always submit written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. Pub believes and acts upon anti-racist principles in our meeting spaces and in our interactions with Pub. While every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted towards people that have been made vulnerable by systemic inequities. And this means stepping up as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. And so we put our actions, our principles into actions by speaking up and speaking out. Each person on this board is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board, and we will remain focused on the impacted individuals or population, condemning the conduct, not the person.
All right, I will quickly run through the meeting guidelines. My name is Amy Archer Masters. Please state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, the name of the person you're addressing or that you're addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by me as the host, so please limit any chats to logistical or technical issues, including asking to sign up for public comment, technical assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and have had your hand up. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board. I may lower your hand once you begin speaking just to maintain the flow of the conversation. During public comments periods, the public can raise their hands and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise your hand. Videos may be turned on when speaking if desired. It's not required. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Members of the public will be muted except when giving public comment. And if you're connected by phone, you may need to press *6 to mute and unmute. As mentioned, public comment will be taken early in the meeting. You can sign up through chat with me or raise your hand during that period. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. All right, back to you, Robin.
All right, so we have a handful of things on the agenda today, a couple announcements, a little bit of follow-up on if we want to engage with the topic that we discussed in our last meeting. And then, of course, I did want to give a little bit of time to just get us prepared for the joint meeting that'll be happening right after this one. All right, so anyone have any disclosures of communications they must admit? Not hearing any, we will move along. All right, this is the moment for public comment. Amy, did we receive any public comment beforehand?
I've not received any by chat or in advance. So if you're in the room, please raise your hand. And just for the record, Robin, we have reached over 6 board members, so we do have a quorum as of now.
All right, I'm not seeing any hand raises or any voices speaking up, so we'll go along to review and approve the minutes from the December 5th meeting. Any pub members that feel that there needs to be edits, please go ahead and raise your hand. Hearing no major objections, let's go ahead and approve of the draft minutes from the December 5th meeting. And then the items, the talking points that we'll chat about today are the proposed Columbia SLU agreement. They're coming to council, or they're coming before council in about 10 days, and we'll need to decide as a board if we would like to engage by providing comment and or support, or if it's not the right time for us. And then it is budget season. And so we just want to touch base with if previous submitted memos are enough to start off the budget process, stating our values, or if we have interest in expanding a little bit on what we've already said. There's a couple work sessions and hearings on the screen that are coming up. And then we also, something that's not on this is we wanted to give at least a couple of minutes before the end of our meeting today just to get us set up on what to expect with the joint session that comes right after this. Amy, with this one, should we leave it on this? Do you want me to?
Yeah, so I was hoping that some of these we could move through relatively quickly, but I was hoping that maybe could just open the floor and hear feedback from pub members quickly on whether you wanted to make any sort of formal comment with the agreement. For those of you who need a refresher, because it's been a little while, you had a presentation from Bureau of Environmental Services staff about the agreement. And because it's going before council, there's just an opportunity to document if you have any feedback or support for proceeding with the agreement. And that could be provided by somebody either verbally at the hearing, or if you wanted, then I could submit something in writing so that it was also part of the formal record. So just wanted to hear from pub members, because there wasn't enough time during that meeting to kind of reach that next step of discussion and deciding whether you wanted to take any action. No action is required if you decide not.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Nice to see y'all. Happy New Year. I am not prepared and ready to make a formal motion on support of the SLU agreement, but I would like to just express, I guess, my opinion that I would like to see us issue a simple statement in support of the agreement. Not testimony, not a big letter, just something, pretty straightforward and simple. And my reasoning is that I think as it was presented, it does seem to be a, thoughtful and, financially prudent, and, relatively inclusive, let's say strategy or proposal. And for those reasons, I would like to see us support it. My trepidation is that it's kind of a trepidation, and another reason I'd like to see us support it is if I understand, Farshad's response to my question about how this agreement sort of could still move forward, even though the higher rate increase was not proposed, was not accepted in the fiscal year's budget. I feel that it is important for us to make a statement of support to this, proactive process and planning, and because we in effect had supported a larger rate increase that was in part larger than the 3.5% because, as proposed, because agreements like this were in there, we're in the budget. And at the same time that I think we should sort of make that point, I am concerned that the the rate increase that was ultimately adopted. And it appears to be, looking at the mayor's 2 budget letters that have come out, there's no appetite for larger than forecast rate increases, certainly this coming up fiscal year either. So my concern is that we're kind of, expressing support for things that we can't really pay for without, taking resources from other important work. All that's to say, I would like to see us support it, but I'd like to hear from other members on how important it is to us, to you all, before making a formal motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Karen. Does anyone have a burning opinion they'd like to say? Go ahead, Chris.
I just want to say I agree with what Karen had said. That way it's just not her. I think most of us feel the same way, but we're not speaking up. So I agree. I think we need to shorten to the point. Thank you.
I'm seeing a thumbs up from Alexis and Julia. And I will say I am in general support of what Karen said, to make a statement, a simple statement of support, and also just being mindful of how we navigate supporting things when we're like, hey, maybe the money might be harder to come by. So I appreciate everyone speaking up on that, and Karen making a quality point. With that, Karen, you want to make a motion? If not, I could.
You all are trusting me to make a short and to the point motion. That's kind of scary. How about I move that PUB express a short statement of support for the Portland Columbia SLU agreement, and also include a short statement of concern about having the necessary rate increases to fund forward-looking proposals such as this one.
Second, Chris Richard.
Beautiful. With that, does it go to public comment or discussion first?
Yeah, discussion in public, then public comment. But I think you probably discussed it fully. So you could probably open the floor for public comment.
Sounds like a good idea. Any members of the public want to speak on this before we vote? Not seeing any. Let's start the round of votes. This is Robin Castro, voting member, and I vote yes. I believe Bob's number 2, but he's in the car.
So if you can, Bob, go ahead and speak up whenever you can. Otherwise, we can go ahead and move to Karen next.
Number 3, Karen Williams, voting member. I vote yes.
This is Heather Day Melgar, voting member, and I also vote yes.
This is Bob at a stoplight, yes.
Am I next? Julia DeGraw, voting member. I vote yes.
Chris Richard, voting member. I vote yes.
Alexis Rife, voting member. I vote yes.
All right, beautifully. The yeses have it. And if anyone specifically has time to assist in writing that, feel free to reach out on the back end through the email. And then I guess we could then start with the topic of budget season. Did you have some background for that you wanted to share, Amy?
Yeah, I can just really quickly share some information. So I did distribute the guidance that has come out from the mayor's office. So there were 2 memos. If you haven't taken a look at those yet, go ahead and read those. They're in my prior emails. We'll come back to the budget topic at future meetings. But I did want to make you aware that the budget office, they have actually going before council. So on Wednesday, I believe. So these dates could change slightly, but I suspect they're pretty locked down. There's a lot of work sessions that are happening in February, so that's earlier than usual. Requested budgets will be due February 16th. The utility rate hearing, which usually happens later in the year in May, is earlier. It's currently scheduled for March 5th, which is the same date as one of the pub meetings. The goal of that, again, was council trying to have that rate discussion earlier in the budget process so that it is more locked down by the time the mayor is proposing budgets and decisions are being made as they move the budget forward. So having that earlier in the process hopefully will be an improvement. But of course, it does change the timeline for pub to absorb enough information about the budget and comment on it as well. And then there will be public listening sessions and the mayor's proposed and all the other things that follow that go through April, May, and June. But those are the key calendar pieces that are relevant. So as Robin mentioned, one of the questions that I had put on the table was just a question about a requested budget letter. I do not have clear guidance. I've tried to find out whether advisory committees are being asked for a requested budget letter to be submitted with the February submission, as they have been in the past. Typically, that is the pub's first letter, and it's more of a values and framing statement, which is very similar to what you provided to the bureaus in the November letter. So there may be that's the key content that you would want to be including in the requested budget letter, or there may be enough information by February 16th that you want to dive a little bit deeper. Usually those are due at the end of January. So I had thought that you would just have the January 18th meeting, but you'll actually have potentially a little bit more time because of all those work sessions that are happening and the slightly different date for requested budget submission. So I think we can continue that conversation at the January 18th meeting and then focus on some of those next pieces. So unless there's strong feelings about it today, I would propose that we just revisit this as you get more information from the bureaus in February. And are more prepared to figure out what you want to comment on at that phase in the process versus at the utility rate hearing. Let's see a thumbs up from Chris. I'm assuming that's about continuing the conversation later. All right. So moving forward, Karen, go ahead.
Where were you headed next, Amy? Because
so next I just had a couple of announcements, and then I was trying to leave enough time for you all to talk a little bit about the joint meeting that you're about to move into. So if you have something about anything that's been covered so far, go ahead and speak now.
I'll hold it because I agree. I think the time talking about the Parks Board meeting is more important. So yeah, I will withdraw my comment. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll do these just really quick, if that's okay, Robin. So just a reminder, administrative review committees, thank you to those who already quickly responded. So I have a couple volunteers for March and May, I think, and a tentative for the February. So if anybody else has not responded yet, just let me know if there are any that you potentially could participate in. Recruitment has been posted. Sorry, give me just a second. Ends up being a little disjointed when I'm trying to track people coming in and out of the room at the same time as talking. The recruitment for voting members has been posted. So you should have seen announcements that came out in December We've received one application so far, that's all. But we knew that it, likely would happen more in the beginning of the year. So hopefully we'll see more come in. It closes in a couple weeks on January 22nd. If you have not already done so, please feel free to share it with any of your networks, anybody that you think might be interested. And I am available to answer any questions or just talk with folks about the process and what it means to be a board member. And then if any of you are willing to be volunteers, if somebody has questions and wants to speak to an actual board member, then just let me know that you're willing to do that, and I can connect you with any potential applicants to answer questions. We typically get that briefly. So, and I see there's a question about, on the recruitment, any specific skills that PUB is looking for. There is a broad list of skills that's listed in the code and just generally, but there is not a really clear targeted skill set that they're looking for. They are really trying to diversify and just have a broad set of skills on the board and make sure that it's balanced. So there have been some gaps that have been identified in the past, so perhaps in public health, and there's generally people with experience with public engagement. But actually the application was written pretty intentionally broad to not require people to, to say how their skills connected, but rather just answer what their interest is and how their interest connects to what the PUB is doing, so that it could be as broad as possible. So there's nothing specific to this year that they're targeting. And then the final one, again, you've received information via email and also announced it in the prior meeting, but just wanted to let folks know that today is the deadline if anybody is interested in speaking at the public hearing through the EPA on the lead improvements to their rules. That hearing is on January 16th. Today's the deadline to pre-register, but they do take registration all the way up through the hearing date. It's just not guaranteed whether people would be able to speak. So just wanted to make sure that that was on the table and people were aware of that. Any questions about those before I move on to the next? All right, I will pass it back to you, Robin.
All right. So board members, just wanted to give us a bit of time to prepare and figure out kind of the headspace that we're going into with this meeting, make sure that we're going into it with the right understanding and our intentions. And so, yeah, I just wanted to talk about if anyone had kind of how they're feeling on the board meeting. Has anyone had any reservations? I know that I've had a couple reservations, and just trying to navigate how we can successfully attend this learning session and make it valuable to us as well as valuable to the process going forward. I see Chris's hand is raised. Go ahead, Chris.
I just had some, are we going to ask questions, or are we there to listen? Because I know we had like the general question of has legal figured out if we can even transfer funds out of water and BES to this natural resource? Because it was proposed by the council, but it hadn't been approved or vetted by legal. Has that happened yet? Should we be asking now? Should we be waiting to the joint meeting and asking these questions? Where do we find out these kind of real basic questions?
This is Amy. So I'll try to respond, although if anybody else in the room is better equipped, certainly please do jump in, staff or others. So yes, any questions that you have, if there's time, I would certainly ask them at the meeting. So you all three of the boards and commissions that are engaging are all equally engaging, although we're meeting during the Parks Board's time. So they're kind of the lead in getting it started. But then the bulk of the content is broken down with the bureau directors and their staff providing that information. So I know those work groups have continued to work through the issues. I'm assuming that the part of the presentation may be some answers to those questions that have come up before. If not answered, then I would certainly encourage you to put them on the table. I'm not sure that everything will be answered in this meeting. My guess is you're mostly hearing what that group has prepared so that all the boards have the same information as you move into that work session with council, so that if you're wanting to engage as a board in that work session, you at least have the current information and could comment on whatever's current, not pointing out things that have already been addressed or resolved. So I believe that is the intent. And part of what was asked for is that you're all getting the same information. And so that is why it's a joint meeting. Julia, go ahead.
I had a similar question, but to kind of expand upon it, like I am not able to stay for pretty much the last hour of this meeting because I have a work obligation, and I have like some opinions and some concerns and things that I would like to be able to share, and I'm worried I'm going to like miss the opportunity if there is one. So I guess that's like, you know, if this is a meeting for us, it still is a little bit unclear to me, like if this is a space where we're invited to provide input or ask questions. But if so, like, can I at least maybe drop something in the chat to you if like when I have to leave, it's not the right time? Could you be like, you know, Commissioner DeGraw at this, you know what I mean? Is there like, I'm trying to figure out what the best way is for somebody who can't be here for the whole thing to maybe make sure that at least a point or two that I might want to make or a question I might have could make it into the space if I have to leave.
I think that's a great idea. If you can send any information that you want to, if there's opportunity to share, to either email or chat it to me. And I can also make sure that Robin, since she is the chair, or other pub members who are going to be in the room, also get any of that content, so that if there is opportunity and any of you aren't in the room, that you have the opportunity to share that. You have been provided those links other than the public link, so that you're active members of that meeting. So where there's space for questions, you should be able to ask them. I don't know, given the limited time that they have available, how much that you're going to be able to dive into. I'm sure you could spend 50 minutes just asking questions and having some responses. So I suspect there won't be enough time for everything that you want to cover. My hope is that the conversation and you generating what your feedback is for council and for that full group can further be honed at your next pub meeting as well. And so the conversation, you'll at least have the current information, hopefully by the end of the meeting today, and the beginning of answers to questions. But if there's more that's needed, then maybe that can be addressed before your next meeting so that you can further formulate what you want to say to council.
That was super helpful. Thank you.
I would envision the work session as one of your primary opportunities for having your voice heard, if it's too late, you know, based on the conversation today.
And yeah, that was something that I was also kind of a little bit critical of, and that is I definitely see value in the information session, but if we're going to have three boards together, it definitely seems like there's a lot of smart people in that room that are going to have a lot of follow-up questions. And so this might be one of those situations where because I'm assuming we're not going to have enough time for everyone who has a question to have it, that it might be one of those things where we submit follow-up questions, and instead of just having pub receive those answers, maybe it would be good if all of the advisory bodies submit follow-up questions, and if we could get like that centralized and then answered and then given back to us, and that way any follow-up information that's given, we're at least all getting it, and we're not just getting it with just our board members. But we did invite Jack and Michelle from Commissioner Mapp's office in to give us a little bit of information and background because they're a little bit closer to the pulse on this one. And they also shared some of my general concerns. And so let me just go ahead and offer that space to Jack. Go ahead.
Hey folks, thank you for having us and for crashing your party before the other party starts. Sorry, Julia, you can't be around to party with us with the Parks Board. So clarity on a couple of things. We came in a little bit early. So off topic, sorry, Amy, bad facilitation on my part, but February 8th is the Public Works work session for budget. So if you want to attend, be there, listen online, whatever, February 8th is the work session, 2 p.m. I think 2 p.m., although they said maybe starting it a little bit later. But we'll give you that information when we get it from the mayor's office for confirmed time, because that wasn't on your list when I saw the dates up there. So February 8th. Related to this afternoon or this evening, the work session for natural resources on February 1st. There isn't public testimony at work sessions, so I just want to clarify that. However, one of the questions that I would encourage you to ask today of staff who are planning the work session is how you will be engaged in that dialogue, and if the advisory bodies will have a role in speaking at this work session and providing feedback at the work session. What is your role and how will you be engaged, I think is a really pertinent one for you. I was under the impression that this joint meeting was going to be a more robust discussion between the advisory bodies to kind of touch on some things that maybe there was different understandings of. And that's not what the agenda felt like to me. And sort of to Amy's point earlier, there wasn't a lot of Q&A time. And so it may be something at the top of the hour that you want to address. Again, this may be, you know, I don't know if it's something that you want to bring up at the top of the hour and say, we really actually were hoping to have more of a discussion and we'd like to reduce the agenda greatly, because you guys weren't, it is my understanding that you did not participate in creating the agenda. You're sort of being invited as guests, which is weird because you're advisory bodies equally and should have been able to set the agenda with it. So I don't know why it would be inappropriate. I think it would be appropriate to ask those questions sort of at the top of the hour to try to get clarity on what your role is. So yeah, I mean, Amy, I think so I saw Amy, I think we should have clarity about that and ask if that's what Pub wants to be invited testimony of the work session, that ask be on the table tonight, so that folks are aware that that's an ask. There is invited testimony at work sessions, that is true. And if Pub wants to be invited testimony, for sure our office can make that happen. I think you guys should also clarify with the staff who are running the natural resources work session discussion. I think that should be brought up so that they're aware. Was there any questions from folks?
Watch what I made that entire time. Might have lost Amy.
Yes, I apologize for my oversight. I guess I had assumed that advisory boards would be invited testimony, but yeah, I would definitely recommend Pub ask for that if you're wanting to provide feedback, because otherwise the only opportunity to do so would be in letter form outside of the process completely, or during the standard budget process, which is very separate from these work sessions that are happening. And so you typically are invited testimony at those budget work sessions, although they all look different this year. So I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like.
I think the bureaus would say they're also trying to figure out what it looks like because they haven't gotten clear guidance yet from the city budget office on what those work sessions, how those work sessions, so not talking about natural resources, but talking about the budget work session on February 8th, those dates all just got decided, either at the end of last week or the beginning of this week. It's all melding together for me. I can't remember when I was on the phone with the mayor's office and they were telling me this. Those just got decided, and they shared with us the purpose of having those sooner is so that what happened last year related to rates and with PBOT, with parking fees, doesn't happen, where it's a last, many discussions happen and then people are, you know, sort of changing votes or changing rates 48 hours before the vote is supposed to happen. They're trying to have the conversations as early as possible. There's also just a lot of budgetary changes that are going to be happening due to charter reform, and I think they're trying to get ahead of what that looks like in the mayor's proposed by having bureaus really like flesh some of that out in their budgets. So that's just kind of broader context around the budget conversations, but I encourage you to ask all the questions and get some more feedback from the bureaus now that we actually have a date on the calendar. Because I do think though that they don't have a ton of answers just yet. They're waiting for further guidance from the city budget office and the mayor's office on the work sessions themselves.
And the challenge for that, for you all as a board, is that because things are moving so quickly, and the guidance is coming out as it's being formed, the chances are that sometimes you don't have a meeting between when we have clear information and when something's happening. So we just want to try to be prepared and know kind of what is next, so that you all have the authority to speak as a board, not just as individuals, if possible.
And I know Chris asked earlier, like, is it appropriate to ask questions in this afternoon's meeting or this evening's meeting? Or when is it appropriate, or what questions? I mean, you are members of an advisory body. You're being asked to engage on a topic that many members of this advisory body in particular care about. I would encourage you to do so at any point. I think that the agenda that was sent out was more like, we're going to present to you the results. I would encourage you to ask all of the questions that are on your minds, and either put those in chats in writing, or raise your hands if you're attending virtually and you're not in person. There is going to be some folks attending in person. We will go over to the Portland building shortly and attend in person. And there will be Parks Board members who are attending in person, and then of course many folks attending virtually. So I don't think that you should ask for permission to ask questions when you requested of council via your letter to have more engagement, and this is a part of that. So you absolutely should feel empowered to engage, and I don't know if you need me to be more explicit than that, but I do think that you should ask the questions that are gnawing at you related to this work. It's your role. I see that as your role. Our office sees that as your role.
Chris, go ahead.
Question, will legal be there to answer some of the questions? Because a number of my questions are the legality of some of this. And is it really going to be the highest ranking people, that the directors who may not know? Or legal is given their... It's okay.
I actually don't know if city attorney's office is going to be there, Chris. That's a great question. I'm not sure. If they weren't explicitly invited, they probably wouldn't, just like, they don't necessarily attend joint meetings.
Because I'm not trying to be rude, but if legal hasn't said that this is okay, this seems like a giant waste of everyone's time to be having this conversation.
So, let me pretend I know what one of your questions is, and you can tell me if it's not accurate or not, but because this was not an ordinance, but because it was a resolution, does it have the same power, authority, etc. as an ordinance would? And the answer to that is yes. So legal has shared that with our office, like, yes, they still voted. It is a resolution, but they still voted on it. The thing that is more unclear, and there's and I think even legal would be gray area with you as attorneys are wont to do, is the ordinance itself, or the amendment that was passed, I'm sorry, the amendment that was passed on a resolution, the specific amendment assigning parks these things, sort of the Ryan amendment, did not have enough detail for anybody to make choices or decisions that would be budgetary or otherwise staffing, or it was very vague. And that's what I'm implying should be the purpose of a lot of these discussions, is to clarify what that vagueness is. And it is not appropriate for any one bureau or director or anybody or a commissioner's office to back end what they wanted to happen out of a very vague amendment. And so I think you should ask for that clarity. And if it requires further legal clarity, you can say, we expect to hear a response from the city attorney's office. We'd like to hear a response. Here's our question. We'd like to hear a response from the city attorney's office. But in terms of it was voted on, and even though it was a resolution with an amendment to a resolution, it's still sort of binding in that sense because it's still city policy that was voted on. I don't know if that was one of your questions, but.
That's part of it, but also part of it is like after the Anderson lawsuit, the council said to do something and then we got sued and general fund had to refund BES. I've been with BES for 15 years and it seems frequently that the city gets sued and the city loses and then BES has to be re-enriched. And has that question been answered yet? Because is Parks going to be able to pay BES back if it turns out that this is not okay? Because it seems, not to be horribly blunt, but Parks seems frequently to not have enough money. And if they suddenly have to come up with millions of dollars to refund BES, that's going to cause all kinds of havoc, I would think.
I think that's a great question to ask, Chris. I think I would say that the only similar sort of question and answer that we got from the city attorneys on that is it based on the Anderson lawsuit, is it okay? And it was framed differently because it wasn't us asking, but we got a response on it, right? Like, is it okay for Parks to have this work in their portfolio? And they said, yes, but there was no clarity about then, but who is paying, who's footing the bill, which is your point, right? So I do think you should ask that question as you just asked it and sort of say, for those of you who don't know, because there's plenty of people around this table who aren't going to have any context for the Anderson lawsuit whatsoever. You guys are uniquely, you have a unique viewpoint because Pub was created because of the Anderson lawsuit. So I do think you have that unique perspective that you guys should share and make that, and sort of make that known and sort of, and ask that question of like, hey, what do we know about this? And if we would request a response from, the city attorney's office on this specific question. Part of why I think that they're going to be vague is because the amendment itself was vague. So it's like, well, what are we responding to? Because sure, this work can exist in any portfolio, but at the end of the day, the color of money does matter as it's related to ratepayer dollars. And I'm unclear as you are in that space.
Well, it just seems like that gentleman, as we all are aware, he's very quick to sue and he seems to win frequently.
Yeah, sure.
And that's my concern, is that we're going to go down a path and spend a whole lot of money. Yes, I am part of BES, so it all comes back to us, but Parks is the one who's going to end up paying the consequences for this.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So, sorry. With that, I'm gonna have to jump in just to keep us on time with the fact that we'll be jumping to a meeting in about 10 minutes. I wanted to make sure that everyone know. Amy, am I correct that everyone should have got like a personalized Zoom request, or was that just
Yeah, I will put on the screen the public one, but for Pub members, you should have received a Zoom link directly so that you can participate as a board member. So it hopefully just identifies you differently because they do a webinar format. So make sure that your link doesn't look exactly like this one on screen. It has more numbers at the end that are specific to you. So if you have difficulty with that, you can use the public one that is in my email. That's an option. If any of you are heading downtown, I just received word from one of the staff members that the Portland building is locked. So I think that Bob is the only one who is going in person. So Bob got in, but if there's anybody else who's in this room, besides those of you who have IDs and you can get in the building, but for pub members, if any of you are going, let me know and I will let BES staff know as well, so that you can make it into the building. And I-
Amy, Jack and I are walking over in person and I was just told it's in room 216, is that correct?
That's where, yeah, Parks Board said that they were meeting. It's not a huge room though, so I'm not sure if they changed that. I imagine there should be signs.
If anybody else was planning on being in person, we can swipe you in. I've got a badge for the Portland building. I just need to know if we should be waiting outside for anybody because we were gonna walk over right now.
Bob is the only one that I knew. So if you're in the room, either chat me or raise your hand. And just so that it's on the public record as we're wrapping up, Bob had, before he dropped off, before the meeting started, he had flagged that Commissioner Gonzalez introduced an amendment to have eco roofs suspended for 5 years. I don't have all the details on that, and Bob has dropped out of the meeting. So I just wanted to state it publicly on the record since it happened before we started the meeting, so that you are all aware, and I will try to find out more information and let you know if it is something that you need to have on the agenda for the next meeting as well. But otherwise, I want to make sure that we wrap so that everybody has time for any sort of technical glitches, finding your Zoom link, and moving to the next.
All right, so I guess with that, we would go meeting adjourn.
Yep.